When she told me her ex should father our kids because of superior genetics, I looked at her calmly and said, "Sounds logical. So does ending this engagement." 72 hours later, she was standing in a bridal boutique when every vendor started calling about cancellations. Hey friends, please subscribe and turn on notifications, like this video, and leave a comment with your impressions. This will be a great help. Thank you. We never tire of reminding you. It's all thanks to you. My name is David. I'm 33, and I own a small but successful commercial property management company in Denver. I'm not going to lie to you about what I look like. I'm 5'9" on a good day, maybe 170 soaking wet, with the kind of hairline that started its retreat when I was 28. I wear reading glasses now. I drive a sensible Toyota. I'm the guy you'd walk past in a coffee shop without a second glance. But I've built a good life. I wake up at 5:45 every morning. I run 3 miles even when it's freezing. I read financial journals and history books. I treat my clients with respect and my employees even better. My business cleared 6 figures in profit last year. I'm not rich, but I'm stable, disciplined, and I've never missed a commitment in my life. For a long time, I thought that meant something. I met Rachel 4 years ago at a friend's wedding in Breckenridge. She was 28, working as a marketing director for a luxury ski resort, and she had this way of lighting up a room that made everyone else feel like background extras. Tall, blonde, the kind of woman who looked expensive even in jeans. When she laughed at my joke about the terrible DJ, I felt like I'd won something. We started dating a week later. Those first 6 months were incredible. She'd drive down to Denver on weekends. I'd drive up to the mountains on Fridays. We'd cook together, binge terrible reality shows, talk until 2 in the morning about everything and nothing. She told me she was exhausted by the superficial guys in her industry, the ones who cared more about their ski stats than actual conversation. She said I was refreshing, grounded, real. I believed every word. We moved in together after a year and a half. She took a new position with a marketing firm in Denver, and we found a nice 2-bedroom in Capitol Hill. I paid the security deposit, $3,200, and covered the first 2 months while she transitioned jobs. She promised she'd split everything 50-50 once she settled in. That promise quietly disappeared somewhere around month 4, but I didn't push it. I made more money. It seemed fair. That's when I started noticing the small things. The comments that felt like compliments with razor blades hidden inside. She'd introduce me to her coworkers and mention my business, then immediately pivot to how she wished I'd dress more stylishly for events. She'd post couples photos on Instagram, but only after spending 20 minutes finding angles that made me look taller or less ordinary. Once, I caught her editing a picture to smooth out my hairline before sharing it. When I asked her about it, she laughed and said she was just playing with filters. Everyone edits their photos, David. Don't be so sensitive. I let it go. You do that when you love someone. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You assume good intentions. You tell yourself that maybe you are being too sensitive. The engagement happened 2 years in. I proposed on a hiking trail outside Estes Park at sunrise, with a ring I'd spent 3 months researching and saving for. 1.5 carats, white gold, exactly the style she'd been pinning on Pinterest for 8 months. She cried, said yes, kissed me like I was the only person in the world. We celebrated with champagne at a bed and breakfast. She posted the ring from 6 different angles within an hour. The comments were everything she'd hoped for. But wedding planning revealed cracks I'd been ignoring. Everything became about appearances, about what people would think, about matching some impossible standard she'd built in her head. The venue had to be the Botanic Gardens, $15,000 just for the space. The photographer had to be someone with 50,000 Instagram followers. She wanted a videographer, a live string quartet, a dessert bar in addition to the cake, and custom cocktails named after us. When I suggested we could save money by skipping the videographer, she looked at me like I'd suggested we cancel the wedding entirely. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event, David. Do you want to look back in 20 years and regret being cheap? I didn't think fiscal responsibility was the same as being cheap, but I nodded and signed the contract. I was already $28,000 deep in deposits, and we hadn't even finalized the caterer. Then there was Brandon, her ex-boyfriend. He came up in conversation the way a song gets stuck in your head, constantly, whether you want it there or not. Brandon had been a CrossFit coach and part-time model when they dated 3 years before she met me. 6'2", all muscle, jawline sharp enough to cut glass. She showed me his Instagram once, casually, like it meant nothing. The guy looked like a movie star's stunt double. They'd broken up because he was emotionally unavailable and had cheated on her during a fitness competition in Phoenix. She claimed she was completely over him, but his name kept surfacing. Brandon would have loved this brewery. Brandon used to do sunrise yoga at Red Rocks. Brandon always knew which wine to order without looking at the list. I started counting the references. 15 in 1 week. 22 the next. I stopped counting when it started affecting my sleep. Then, 2 months before the wedding, she told me Brandon had reached out. Just to apologize, she said. We were folding laundry in the living room on a Sunday afternoon. He said he's been in therapy and wants to make amends to people he hurt. It's part of his recovery process or something. I asked if she responded. I mean, yeah. I'm not going to ignore someone trying to better themselves. We got coffee last week. It was fine. Completely platonic. He's actually dating someone new. Something cold settled in my chest, but I pushed it down. People can be friends with exes. Mature adults do it all the time. I told myself I trusted her. 2 weeks later, she brought it up again. We were at her favorite sushi place downtown, splitting a sake flight, going over the final seating chart for the reception. She'd been quieter than usual, checking her phone every few minutes, smiling at texts she didn't share. I want to talk to you about something, she finally said. And I need you to really listen with an open mind. I set down my chopsticks. Okay, I've been doing a lot of reading lately. About genetics, about biology, about evolutionary psychology. And I've been thinking about our future kids. We'd talked about wanting 2 or 3 children. I'd always pictured coaching Little League, teaching them to ride bikes, reading bedtime stories. I told her I was still excited about that future. Right, but I'm talking about giving them the best possible start, she said. She leaned forward, hands folded, voice steady and rational like she was presenting a marketing pitch. I've been thinking about genetic advantages. Athletic ability, physical health, bone structure, metabolism. All the things that set kids up for success in life. I waited. I already knew where this was going, but some part of me needed to hear her say it. Brandon and I have been talking, she continued. Hypothetically, about what conscious parenting could look like. And David, I need you to hear this with logic, not emotion, because it makes complete sense when you really think about it. My hands went numb. I think Brandon should be the biological father of our children, she said. Not romantically, not in any way that affects our marriage, but purely from a genetic standpoint. He has the athletic markers, the height, the physical traits that would give our kids a real advantage. We could do IVF or even natural conception if that's more viable, and then you and I raise them together. You'd be their father in every meaningful way, but they'd have the genetic foundation they deserve. The restaurant noise faded to static. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, for the moment where she'd laugh and say she was testing me. She stared back, completely serious, almost earnest. You've already discussed this with him, I said. In detail. Well, I had to know if he'd even consider it before bringing it to you. He's actually open to it. He thinks it's a really evolved approach to family planning. He said most people are too insecure to think this rationally. I picked up my water glass. My hand was steady. I took a long drink, set it down, and looked at her directly. That does sound logical, I said. You know what else sounds logical? Marrying Brandon instead. If his genetics are that superior, you should probably build your whole life around maximizing that advantage. The kids should have both genetic parents in the home. That's what all the research says, right? Her face shifted. Confusion first, then something like alarm. David, that's not what I'm saying. No, I'm following your logic all the way through, I said. My voice was calm, almost friendly. If Brandon's genetics are premium and mine are substandard, then I'm just a resource. A paycheck with a decent credit score. Why would you waste the genetics on a co-parenting situation when you could have the full package? Marry the superior specimen. That's the evolutionarily sound choice. You're twisting my words. I'm clarifying them, I said. I pulled out my wallet, counted out $40 for my half of the meal plus tip, and placed it on the table. Here's what's actually going to happen. I'm ending this engagement. You're going to keep the ring because I don't want it back. And I'm going to remove myself from this situation before I invest one more dollar or one more day into someone who sees me as a consolation prize. David, you're being ridiculous. I've never been less ridiculous in my entire life, I said. I stood up. Enjoy your sushi. Enjoy your premium genetics. I'm done. I walked out while she was still sputtering protests. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, waiting for the devastation to hit. Instead, I just felt exhausted and strangely relieved, like I'd been holding my breath for months and finally let it out. I didn't go home that night. I got a hotel room downtown and opened my laptop. If she wanted logic, I'd give her logic. I started making lists. Every vendor contract, every deposit, every shared account, and financial entanglement. I'd been meticulous about record keeping. Comes with the job, so I had everything documented. Receipts, emails, text confirmations, signed agreements. Wedding venue, $12,000 deposit, contract in my name. Photographer, $4,000 deposit, my credit card. Caterer, $6,000 my card. String quartet, $1,800 my card. Florist, $3,000 my card. Videographer, $5,000 my card. The dress alterations, final payment of $3,800 due at her appointment Thursday afternoon. Charged to my Amex where I'd added her as an authorized user 6 months ago. Apartment lease, both names, but I'd paid the $3,200 deposit and 70% of every month's rent for 2 years. Shared checking account. I deposited $8,300. She'd deposited $1,200. Utilities, all linked to my cards for autopay. I spent the entire night going through everything. At 4 in the morning, I started drafting emails. By 7 a.m., I'd contacted every single vendor. Professional, courteous, brief. Due to unforeseen personal circumstances, I need to cancel our contract effective immediately. Per the cancellation terms outlined in Section 4, I understand I will forfeit the deposit. Please confirm receipt of this cancellation and provide documentation. Some vendors were sympathetic. Some were annoyed. None of it mattered. I was getting out. At 8 a.m., I called my bank. Removed Rachel as an authorized user on both credit cards. The representative asked if the cards were lost or stolen. I said no, just removing an authorized user, effective immediately. Done in 4 minutes. At 9 a.m., I transferred my documented portion from our shared checking account into a new individual account I'd opened online. $7,100. My contributions minus her contributions, calculated to the penny. I left her $1,200 in the shared account and screenshot the transaction history showing exactly how I'd calculated the split. At 10 a.m., I called our landlord. Explained I needed to break the lease due to an ended relationship. He was understanding. Said if I gave 60 days notice and forfeited my security deposit, we'd be square. I agreed immediately. Started looking at one-bedroom apartments across town. Then I looked at the calendar. Rachel's final dress fitting was scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. The boutique required the remaining balance, $3,800, before releasing the dress. That charge was set to hit the Amex I'd just deactivated her access to. The timing was too perfect to ignore. I didn't sleep much Tuesday or Wednesday. I worked, I ate, I went through the motions. Rachel texted me 17 times. I didn't respond. She called twice. I let it go to voicemail. On Wednesday night, she sent a long message about how we needed to talk like adults and how I was throwing away 4 years over a misunderstanding. I deleted it without finishing. Thursday afternoon, I was in a coffee shop reviewing property reports when my phone started ringing at 2:32. Rachel. I declined the call. She called again immediately. Then again. On the 4th call, I answered. David, what the actual hell did you do? Her voice was shaking, furious, panicked. My card's declining. I'm at the boutique. There are people here. They won't release my dress, and I look insane. Fix this right now. I can't fix it, I said calmly. I removed you as an authorized user on my credit cards. That account is no longer accessible to you. You can't just, we're getting married in 8 weeks. No, I said, we're not. I canceled the venue Monday night. I canceled the photographer, caterer, florist, quartet, and videographer Tuesday morning. I've terminated all vendor contracts that were in my name and on my accounts. The line went completely silent. Then a sound I'd never heard from her before, something between a gasp and a choke. I meant what I said at the restaurant, Rachel. This engagement is over. If Brandon's genetics are what you want for your children, then you should pursue that. But you'll be doing it without my financial support, my name, or my participation. David, I wasn't serious. I was just thinking out loud. We can go to counseling. You were extremely serious, I said. You'd already discussed it with him in detail before bringing it to me. You presented it as a rational plan. You called me insecure for not immediately agreeing. Those aren't the actions of someone thinking out loud. Those are the actions of someone who's already made up her mind and expected me to go along with it. Please, can we just talk face to face? No. I'll be collecting my belongings from the apartment Saturday morning at 10 a.m. I'll have my brother with me as a witness. Please have my things accessible. Don't contact me unless it's directly about logistics or the lease. Anything else will be ignored. David. I hung up. Then I blocked her number. Then I sat there staring at my laptop screen, feeling nothing except a distant sense of having dodged something catastrophic. She tried every possible route. Called my parents. They'd already heard the full story from me and told her not to contact them again. Called my business partner. He referred her back to me and then sent me a text saying, "Holy shit, man. Good for you." Tried to reach out through 2 mutual friends. I asked them politely to stay out of it. By Friday, she'd apparently realized I wasn't going to engage. So she went public. Saturday morning at 8 a.m., she posted on Facebook and Instagram simultaneously. A long, emotional essay about how I'd abandoned her without explanation, destroyed her dream wedding out of nowhere, and left her humiliated and heartbroken because of my commitment issues and emotional instability. She painted herself as the victim of a cruel, unpredictable man who'd wasted 4 years of her life. The post got dozens of sympathetic comments within an hour. People I barely knew were calling me trash in the comments. I screenshot the entire post. Then I waited. At 2 p.m., after I'd finished loading my things from the apartment with my brother's help, I made my only public statement. I posted on both platforms, keeping it factual and brief. To address the speculation, I ended my engagement to Rachel after she proposed that her ex-boyfriend Brandon should father our future children due to his superior genetics and physical traits, while I would raise and financially support them. She had already discussed this plan with Brandon in detail before presenting it to me as a logical family planning strategy. I declined. I then canceled wedding services contracted and paid for under my name and removed her access to my financial accounts. I have documentation of all conversations and transactions. This is my only statement on the matter. I attached 4 screenshots. Her text to her best friend describing the coffee meetings with Brandon and the phrase, "David's genetics are fine, but not optimal." Her message to me 2 days after the restaurant saying, "I still think you're overreacting to a rational discussion." A screenshot of the sushi restaurant receipt with timestamp. A screenshot of my itemized vendor cancellation emails. I didn't tag her, didn't editorialize, didn't add commentary, just facts and receipts. I posted it and closed the apps. When I checked 3 hours later, my post had over 300 comments and had been shared 40 times. Her original posts were deleted. She'd blocked me on everything. Mutual friends were messaging me with apologies. One of her coworkers sent me a private message saying, "I always thought she was shallow, but this is next level." I didn't respond to any of it. I'd said what I needed to say. The receipts spoke for themselves. Moving out was surprisingly simple. My brother and I rented a U-Haul and packed everything I owned in about 4 hours. Rachel stayed in the bedroom the entire time. Her best friend Kelly sat on the couch, arms crossed, shooting daggers at me with her eyes. I ignored her. I did a final walkthrough of the apartment, checking closets and drawers. Found a few books I'd forgotten, my good winter jacket, a box of old tax documents. As I was loading the last box into the truck, Rachel finally emerged. She looked awful. Swollen eyes, hair in a messy bun, wearing the Northwestern sweatshirt I'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. For a second, I almost felt bad. Then I remembered sitting across from her in that restaurant while she casually suggested outsourcing our children's genetics to her ex-boyfriend. "This is really it," she said. Her voice was small, nothing like the confident tone she usually carried. "This is really it," I said. "I made a mistake. A huge one. I know that now. We can fix this. Therapy, counseling, whatever you need." "You didn't make a mistake, Rachel. You revealed who you are. There's a difference. I love you." I looked at her for a long moment. "You love what I provide. The stability, the income, the reliability. The guy who pays for things and doesn't make waves. But you don't respect me. And love without respect isn't actually love. It's just a transaction where one person pretends. That's not fair. You thought I'd stay because leaving would be harder than being disrespected," I said. You thought I'd negotiate my way down to some compromise where I'd accept being second choice because at least I'd still have you. You fundamentally misunderstood who I am. David, please. I need you to understand something, I said. I set down the box I was holding and looked directly at her. This isn't about Brandon being taller or better looking or more athletic. I've never cared about that. This is about you seeing me as so beneath you that you genuinely believed I'd agree to raise another man's children while you got your genetic fairy tale. That's not something I can forgive. Not because I'm hurt. Because it means you never saw me as an equal. Her face crumpled completely. Tears started streaming down her face. Kelly stood up from the couch, moving toward her protectively. I picked up the box and walked to the truck. My brother was already in the driver's seat. I climbed into the passenger side and didn't look back as we pulled away. The next few weeks were strange. I moved into a one-bedroom in Highlands, closer to my office. Bought new furniture. Established new routines. Blocked mutual friends who tried to play mediator or extract more details for gossip. I threw myself into work, landed 2 new commercial clients, and started going to a gym with a pool where I could swim laps before work. Through the grapevine, a co-worker's girlfriend who knew Rachel's co-worker, I heard that she and Brandon tried dating. It lasted about 6 weeks. Apparently, he was still chronically unfaithful and also not interested in anything serious. Apparently, when you're dating someone for their genetics instead of their character, you end up with exactly what you deserve. She moved to Boulder 3 months later for a new marketing position. I didn't ask for details and didn't care to know more. As for me, I stayed off dating apps for a while. Focused on myself. Read a lot. Traveled to Nashville for a property management conference and actually enjoyed it. Started saying no to things I didn't want to do and yes to things I'd been putting off. In October, 6 months after everything imploded, I met someone. Her name is Claire. She teaches 9th grade English at a public school in Arvada and has the kind of laugh that makes everyone around her smile. We met at a bookstore. She was buying poetry. I was buying a history of urban planning. We both reached for the same novel neither of us had heard of. We got coffee 3 times before she even asked what I did for work. On our 4th date, she told me she appreciated that I actually listened instead of just waiting for my turn to talk. On our 6th date, when I showed up to pick her up and apologized for being 10 minutes late, she said, "You're fine." I appreciate someone who's consistent and honest about things. It took me 2 months to tell her the story about Rachel and Brandon. We were having dinner at her apartment, and she was talking about a student's parents who were going through a messy divorce. Something about the way she described it made me realize I wanted her to know. I told her everything. The dinner conversation, the genetics proposal, the cancellations, the quiet, methodical exit. She listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from shock to something like anger to what looked like respect. When I finished, she was quiet for a minute. Then she said, "I'm really glad you walked away. A lot of people wouldn't have. They'd have stayed and tried to convince themselves it wasn't that bad." I shrugged. Seemed logical. She laughed. That full, genuine laugh I'd already grown to love. "You know what I like about you, David? You don't perform. You're just yourself. That's rare. We've been together 8 months now. She met my parents last month. They adore her. I met hers 2 weeks ago. Her dad and I spent an hour talking about Denver real estate and fly fishing. It felt easy, natural, like I wasn't auditioning for anything. I don't think about Rachel much anymore. When I do, it's not with bitterness or anger, just a distant gratitude. She taught me that you can love someone and still walk away. That self-respect isn't negotiable. That the right person won't make you feel like a backup plan with a checkbook. Last week, Claire and I were hiking Chautauqua, and she stopped at a viewpoint to take a photo. I watched her framing the shot, laughing at herself for taking too long, completely unself-conscious. She turned and smiled at me, and I realized something. This is what it's supposed to feel like. Easy, respectful, equal. Sounds logical. If you've been through something like this or just want to share your thoughts about knowing when to walk away, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your stories.